Okay, just tell me whether you can see the presentation from my end, yes or no?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as we have already discussed in the last week, that whenever you are dealing with any identification of a pathogen for different types of infections, you are supposed to also perform a set of some of the biochemicals which are helping us to identify, or simply saying the character to which are helping us to characterize the given isolate, and then finally it can lead to the identification of that particular isolate, which can be used for the overall treatment purpose as far as clinical condition is concerned. So obviously each and every biochemical test is having their own significance, and these are also having their limited use. So limited use in the sense, not all biochemicals are useful for identification of all types of organism, but some of the biochemicals are having so much significance that these are actually being used to identify that particular type of pathogen. So simply saying, some biochemicals are so much specific and which are actually something as a key indicator for identification of particular type of a pathogen. So I think we are also having one set of biochemicals to be studied after this, that is called as a IMVIC test. In collectively 4 tests are there. So before that we are having one more test to be studied over there. So in this whole week we are having different biochemicals to be studied, and starting with the first one, that is the phenylalanine diamines test. Okay, so obviously there are a variety of enzymes which are actually carrying out the catabolism of amino acids. So basically 2 main enzymes which are involved in the catabolism of amino acids. So these are 2 types of two groups of enzymes. First being decarboxylase and another being the deaminase. So there are also some biochemical tests which are having principle based onto the decarboxylase enzymes, and some of them some of the tests are also based onto the deaminase activity. So deaminase and decarboxylase are the 2 basic enzymes which are used in the catabolism of amino acids by a number of microorganisms, and these can be also used as an indicator for their identification, because not all these pathogens are having same set of enzymes. Some are lacking such type of enzymes, while some are having this type of enzymes, and that's why same principle can be used for the identification purpose. And that is true with the phenylalanine diamines test. So the name of the test itself is saying what type of phenomena or reaction is supposed to occur behind the scene, and which can give us the visible results which can be used for the interpretation purpose. Okay, so the phenylalanine diamines test, obviously test is one of the we can say the procedure by which we can perform this overall experiment. Phenylalanine diamines, so it is based on one enzyme which is called as a phenylalanine diamines. So I'm just a minute. Okay, it's visible here. So the test is based on to the presence of the specific type of enzyme which is called as a phenylalanine diamines, and obviously we are detecting one type of end product in this particular test which is called as a phenyl pyruvic acid, and that's why the phenylalanine diamines test is also sometimes called as a PPA test. Okay, PPA stands for the end product or a breakdown product that is obtained by the deamination of a amino acid phenylalanine. So PPA stands for the phenyl pyruvic acid, and that's why this test can be also called as a PPA test. Okay, and it is basically being used to test the ability of different types of organism to produce the enzyme deaminase. So obviously, as you know, each amino acid is having 3 main groups which are attached to the single, or we can say the central carbon atom, and depending on to the different types of alkyl groups attached, we are having the different types of amino acids. But some of the functional groups are basic, and some of these functional groups are constant for most of the amino acids. So these are being hydrogen, then carboxylic acid at the one end, and the amino group at the another end. So out of that, amino group is the group of that amino acid that is reacting with this particular type of or that is actually useful that is actually reacting with this enzyme, because enzyme is called as a deaminase. So this particular enzyme is having capability to remove the amino group from the amino acid phenylalanine, and then it is producing the phenyl pyruvic acid which is called as a PPA. And along with that, as it is being the deaminase, it is supposed to remove the ammonia. That is, the amino group is removed as a ammonia gas, and this oral procedure is called as a oxidative deamination of the phenylalanine. So after that, we are supposed to add the 10% ferric chloride onto the growth that is obtained on a slant, and then we are supposed to get the visible green color, and that is the positive taste. Okay, so overall principle is something like this. If any organism is having capability to produce the enzyme phenylalanine deaminase, this enzyme removes the amino group from the phenylalanine and then produces two end products, one phenyl pyruvic acid and another one the ammonia gas. Okay, out of these two products, the phenyl pyruvic acid is reacting with the 10% ferric chloride that we are supposed to add after 1 day once we got the growth on that slant. And if there is a product production, that is the phenyl pyruvic acid is present in that slant, that is supposed to react with the ferric ion, and then we are supposed to get the green color. So green color indicates the positive taste, and if there is a no development of green color, it indicates the negative phenylalanine deaminase taste. And that is the interpretation for our this phenylalanine deaminase taste. Okay, so yes, here's the reaction. So yes, are you able to see the reaction over here?
So will you please show the previous slide again?
Actually, I've just put that in a text form so that you can have that as a verbal verbal principle also. But okay, yes, we are having the procedure later on. Okay, at that time you may get how to perform this practical. Okay, don't bother about it because this is just the principle. Okay. Yes, are you done?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the principle for phenylalanine deaminase test, and this is the reaction. So we can differentiate or we can make partition in this overall reaction that it's supposed to happen as far as this test is concerned. So you can see the structure also in this particular slide. So obviously you are having the intact L-phenylalanine enzyme over there, phenylalanine amino acid over there. And after deamination by enzyme phenylalanine deaminase, you are getting two end products, phenyl pyruvic acid and another one the ammonia. So phenyl pyruvic acid is one of the member of a keto acids. You might have studied in your biochemistry. Okay, so it is one of the example of a keto acids. Okay. So out of this, so for example, after that overall reaction, if the organism is possessing the capability or possessing the enzyme phenylalanine deaminase, we are supposed to get these two end products, but these are not directly observable by our any of the techniques. So we are supposed to add something over there, and that is the 10% ferric chloride. So ferric ions are supplied by addition of 10% ferric chloride, and that actually reacts with the end product, one of the end products, that is the phenyl pyruvic acid, and then we are supposed to get the green complex. Okay, and that green complex indicates that overall taste is positive. And if there is no presence of an enzyme, we are not supposed to get any end product like phenyl pyruvic acid, and that's why it will not react with the ferric ions, and we are supposed to get no color change or no color development, and that is the negative taste. Okay, so you will say how there is a presence of acid. So I think you can see that there is a one word mentioned as acid over here. Okay, so you will say we are adding the 10% ferric chloride, then how we are getting the acidic condition over there? But as far as the preparation of this reagent is concerned, the composition of this reagent what we are supposed to add, that is simple one, you can note it down from your end. So we are supposed to prepare the 10% aqueous ferric chloride solution initially first. Okay, 10% ferric chloride solution in water. Okay, distilled water obviously. Okay, and that is supposed to be acidified by adding 2.5 ml of a concentrated hydrochloric acid, that is the HCl. Okay, and that is supposed to be used for this particular test. Okay, and normally it is suggested that we are supposed to use freshly prepared ferric chloride solution. Okay, so whatever we are using as a reagent for indication of this particular test, whether it is positive or negative, we are supposed to use the freshly prepared 10% ferric chloride. Okay.
Sir.
Hello. Yes,
Sir,
yes.
could you repeat how much of acid you have to add?
2.5 ml of a concentrated HCl in 10% of aqueous ferric chloride solution. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So as far as the composition for the media to be used for this particular test is concerned, this is the composition. I think you are well familiar with the role of these different types of ingredients. So yeast extract is obviously the source of organic nitrogen and obviously the base source of vitamin B12 of vitamins of the B complex. Sodium chloride for maintenance of osmotic balance. Phenylalanine, obviously the substrate for enzyme we are looking for, and disodium hydrogen phosphate to maintain the buffering capacity while there is a growth, and then agar obviously for the solidification purpose. pH 7.3. So now we are done with the composition and principle, and now we can go for the procedure. So is it clear to you all so far whatever we have discussed regarding the principle and the composition of medium? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. So
Yes,
will
sir.
you show the composition again?
Okay,
Yes,
yes.
sir, please.
This is
Yes,
the-
sir.
So once you are done with this composition, please tell me so that I can go for the next, okay? Are you noting down the composition? Is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I think you can get it from your end by downloading some of the PDFs like Hymedia catalogs and all. Okay, so it's okay.
Yes,
And
sir.
obviously
It's
we are sharing the presentation with you. Then you can get it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So as far as the procedure for this particular test is concerned, obviously some of the biochemicals are present in a liquid something like a liquid medium. Some of them are actually used while preparing their plates, and obviously most of the biochemicals are in use once these are in a agar slant form. Okay, so that is true with this particular test also. So whatever medium we have just discussed for its composition, we are supposed to prepare the slant of that medium. Okay, so initially we are supposed to have the sterile phenylalanine agar slant that is supposed to be ready with you. Then you are supposed to inoculate the test organism on that sterile phenylalanine agar slant. Obviously, that is the basic technique we already studied. Then go for the incubation overnight at 37 degrees Celsius. I have just put down the temperature as a 37 degrees Celsius because whatever biochemicals we are supposed to use, most of them are being used for the identification for the pathogens, identification of the pathogens. And obviously, being human pathogens, most of the organisms prepare the temperature that is near about our body temperature, and that's why we need to incubate at 37 degrees Celsius. And then after overnight incubation at 37 degrees Celsius, we are supposed to initially observe for the growth on a slant, whether there is a visible growth or not. Because sometimes what happens, if that overall phenylalanine gas slant is not that much well, at that time you may not get any growth as such. And if you directly go for the next step, at that time you may get the false negative results also. And that's why we need to observe the growth on the slant. Okay. Once you are confirming that there is a presence of a growth on a slant, then we are supposed to add near about 4 to 5 drops of a 10% freshly prepared 10% ferric chloride on the growth on a slant. Okay, and we are supposed to gently tilt it down in we can say 2 directions, so that the overall growth, or we can say the overall growth that is on a slant, that is getting covered with the added 10% ferric chloride, so that reaction can take place at the all over surface of the growth. Okay, and then we are supposed to observe for the color change. So if you are getting the green coloration, we are supposed to interpret that the overall test is a positive. And if there is no color change, then the test is negative. Okay, and it is also recommended that you are supposed to observe the color change within 5 minutes, because being a complex with ferric ions and that phenylpyric acid, there is a probability that overall color may fade up. And if you observe the test near about after 5 to 7 minutes, at that time you may also get the false negative results. And that's why it is recommended that you are supposed to observe this test within 5 minutes. Okay, obviously after addition of the reagent itself, you may get the color development within 1 minute also, or within a few seconds also. Okay, but you are not supposed to delay the observation, as it may fade out the color and that can give rise to the false negative results. Okay, so you may get overall observation something like this. So the first tube is showing the negative test. So you can see that there is a presence of a reagent at the corner or at that small space. That is the only color of the reagent. But at the right hand side, you can see that overall surface of the growth on a slant is something like a blue, something like a greenish, and that is the positive test for the phenylalanine deaminase. Okay, which means the organism which might have been grown on this slant is producing the enzyme phenylalanine deaminase, and that has produced the phenylpyruvic acid that has reacted with the 10% perchloride to give the green color complex. Okay, and this is the positive test, and that oral phenomena is completely absent in this slant, and that's why it is a negative test, indicating or showing no color change. Okay. So as far as the main use or main purpose of this test is concerned, obviously it is one of the key indicator for the identification, or we can say the confirmation of a Proteus species. So you will be having this particular medium to be used as one of the biochemical tests once you are dealing with the different types of organism from Enterobacteriaceae family. So out of that, I think for UTI infections, you will be having one pathogen, that is the clinical pathogen or one of the pathogen that can cause the urinary tract infection, that is the Proteus species, including Proteus mirabilis and Proteus vulgaris. So in order to separate out, or we can say in order to differentiate out the Proteus genus from other members of Enterobacteriaceae like Escherichia coli, Salmonella, Shigella, and all, or Klebsiella also, you will be obviously this test will be helpful you to differentiate this Proteus genus from the other members of the Enterobacteriaceae family, because all other members of the Enterobacteriaceae family are giving negative results for this particular test, while Proteus is giving the positive test. And obviously along with Proteus, Morganella and the Providentia are also giving the positive test. But I think these are not that much predominant as far as the UTI infections are concerned, and at that time you will be having the Proteus species only, and that can be easy for your identification. Okay, so this is the basic we can say the application of this particular test as far as identification of clinical pathogens is concerned in the urinary tract infections. Okay. So being one of the simple and obviously being simple and easy to perform test, I think whatever you have discussed, that is enough. So if you have any doubt query regarding this test, you can ask by putting your question in a chat box also, and you can also ask verbally by unmuting yourself.
Sir,
Yes.
how are false positive result are related to time in this test? Like, are there another factors which can give us green color?
One problem commonly arises if you perform this particular test for Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Okay, so at that time, obviously, as you know, Pseudomonas aeruginosa itself is producing the green pigment, and that can make a confusion over there. But Pseudomonas aeruginosa, yes, it is phenylalanine deaminase negative. Okay, it is not producing the phenylalanine deaminase, and that's why it may give false positive, something like that. Okay, because the organism itself is having its own pigment that is looking similar. Okay, but obviously I have mentioned in a procedure, you are supposed to initially observe the growth before adding the 10% perchloride, right? Yes, is it?
Okay, sir.
So then if you observe the color pigmentation already there before adding the perchloride, you can obviously consider this point, that there is already green coloration formed because of the pigment production. So obviously you are supposed to go for any other alternative. Okay, because the green indication can the green coloration because of that pigment, but not because of any complex formation that might be there because of addition of a 10% perchloride. Okay. I have just read as extra, or we can say the extra referencing as such. It is also one of the, obviously, that overall capability of producing enzyme, that is the phenylalanine deaminase enzyme. Okay, I'm just asking you all, if you have any doubt query, you can ask, and after that I will be sharing that. Okay, so we are just dealing with the question and answers first, and then I will be sharing that extra information with you all. Yes, do you have any doubt query? Spelling mistake. Yes. Am I audible to you all? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yes, do you have any doubt query regarding the content so far we have discussed? Yes or no?
Nitin sir, there is a question in the chat box.
Oh, okay, okay. Just a minute. Can this enzyme have any application for PKU? What does that stand for?
Phenylketonuria.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, you are mentioning about that one of the clinical disease. Okay. I am not sure about that, but I think yes, Sajin sir, you can add over there.
So basically, phenylketonuria is a condition. See, phenylalanine is basically one of the most significant enzymes required for growth of any human. Okay, so it's a condition wherein the enzyme which is needed to use phenylalanine is deficient. Okay, in the system. So that's the reason why phenylalanine cannot be incorporated by this particular individual, and neither it can be converted, into any other amino acids like tyrosine, because tyrosine is basically synthesized from phenylalanine. So what happens is that phenylalanine, because it's not getting converted into other components, phenylalanine starts getting accumulated in the individual, in the blood. Okay, and that can lead to brain damage, seizures, and also affects the mental ability or cognitive abilities of the individual. So I don't think that this enzyme has any role to play there. It's a completely independent condition and does not have any link with this particular scenario, because here in phenylketonuria we are talking about those enzymes which are required for converting phenylalanine into tyrosine, and I don't think that it's a deaminase. Okay, so maybe you will have to look at which enzyme is deficient in that particular case. But it's surely not the deaminase, as far as I know. If I am not wrong, it's some kind of a hydroxylase which is responsible for conversion of phenylalanine to tyrosine, and that hydroxylase is what is deficient. So surely not deaminase.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, so I think Sarvesh, are you suggesting that we can make use of this particular enzyme to degrade the accumulated phenylalanine? Is it like that?
Yeah, I just had a doubt.
Yes, yes, okay. So yes, so obviously that can be one of the hypotheses, but we need to confirm it. Okay. Yes.
I think even if you have that kind of a query that you can use this enzyme to probably, reduce the levels of phenylalanine, that's not true. I will tell you why. I actually wanted to add something to Nitin sir. Is it okay if I add something to?
Yes, yes, obviously, yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to make additions to the biochemistry part of this for a basic reason that they learn this part in the sixth semester, because protein and nucleic acid metabolism is in the sixth semester. So I also want you guys to go out with some basic understandings of the biochemistry of this particular reaction. So that's why I wanted to speak in Sarvesh, even if you think that you can use this enzyme to probably reduce the amount of phenylalanine, you cannot. I will tell you why. Okay. So first and foremost, you have to understand that what we are addressing over here is basically okay. It's irritating me. Basically an oxidative deamination. Okay. So what do you mean by oxidative deamination over here? So please understand that phenylalanine deaminase is basically going to carry out this deamination of phenylalanine in two steps. Okay. So the first step that it has is basically removal of hydrogen. Okay, and it removes hydrogen to form something called as amino acid. An amino acid is converted to an amino acid. Okay, that is the first thing that you will see. Okay, post which you will see that there is going to be in the second step, you are hydrolyzing the amino acid to a keto acid. Okay, and this hydrolysis means it's going to involve a water molecule in this particular step, right? So, okay, this is irritating me now. I don't know what's up with it. So let me show you the reaction very quickly, what the reaction is like. So the reaction is something like this. The general reaction of oxidative deamination, wherein if this is my amino acid and takes place in presence of half O2, you are removing two hydrogens in this process. This is my enzyme and it gives rise to RCNH-COOH after removal of two hydrogens. So this is nothing but an amino acid. Okay, and after this, what we are going to do is, in presence of water molecules, we are. I'm so sorry for this. In presence of water molecule, we are going to convert it into a keto acid. Okay, wherein you are going to get rid of the amino group in the form of ammonia. So NH and two hydrogens, which is going to come from water molecule. So that's how ammonia is going to be given out, and what you're left with is a keto acid. Okay, so let me just quickly switch to a better version of the board so that we don't waste a lot of time in this. We are back to what we use regularly. Okay, so in case of phenylalanine, this is the structure of phenylalanine. CH2, CH, COOH, this is NH2. So this is my phenylalanine. So in presence of oxygen, there's going to be a flavoprotein involved like FAD, which is going to be the acceptor of hydrogen. Okay, so you get the hydrogen removed, and in turn, what you get as your product, also a water molecule is involved. What you get as your product is something like this: CH2, C double bond O, COOH plus ammonia. So this is nothing but phenyl pyruvate, which is phenyl pyruvic acid, and ammonia. Okay, this is my reaction of, what happens when there is phenylalanine deaminase. Now coming to Sarvesh, if Sarvesh meant that, can we use this enzyme to break down phenylalanine that is accumulating in PKU? We cannot. I'll tell you why. Because phenyl pyruvate further can be metabolized into phenyl lactic acid or phenyl acetic acid. And both of these act as precursors for synthesizing phenylalanine. So it is like you're going back to where you were. Okay, so I hope, Sarvesh, now you have understood that we can't even use this enzyme for treatment purposes. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the process. Now, phenyl pyruvate is something that we want to detect, right? We want to detect in this test. So for that, as sir clearly said that you use an acidic 10% FeCl3 solution as your detection reagent. And let me tell you that the basis of this particular interaction, wherein you say that FeCl3 reagent interacts with phenyl pyruvic acid, actually that also has a basis to it as to how it takes place. So let me tell you that the ammonia that is released, okay, that's going to interact with few carbonic acids which are there in the system, okay, which are produced due to metabolism of the organism, and it produces something called as, not just carbonic acid, even maybe with some proteinaceous components present in the yeast extract, it is going to form something called as hydrazine. Okay, now this hydrazine has a lot of significance. I'll tell you why. Because your PPA, which you have produced from phenylalanine due to deamination, this PPA will interact with hydrazine, okay, and there is a condensation reaction that is taking place basically over here, which is catalyzed by my FeCl3. Okay, so this condensation is responsible for converting my PPA into a compound which I call as phenyl hydrazone. This is the compound which gives you green color. Okay, so you have hydrazine that is formed, which interacts with PPA, condenses in presence of FeCl3, gives you phenyl hydrazone. So hydrazine to hydrazone conversion cannot take place in absence of FeCl. Please remember this, because FeCl3 is basically a chelating agent, and it is responsible for chelating PPA with hydrazine to give you that strong green color that you see. And you know, for green color to be strong enough, you need to have good exposure to oxygen. So the slant in which you are putting FeCl3, you slightly tilt it, okay, and you should see change in color in the slant part, as well as you may change, you may see the color change in the syneresis fluid. This is a very important term. Syneresis fluid is the fluid that you see accumulating after addition of FeCl3 in the slant. So along with the slant, many a times even the syneresis fluid may start turning green in color. Okay, the interpretation, as sir very correctly mentioned, has to happen in 1 to 5 minutes, has to be an immediate interpretation for a basic reason that the color fades very quickly. So it is better to interpret it as early as possible, because phenyl hydrazone is something which, you know, gets oxidized further. So before it is oxidized, you have to quickly note the color. Okay, so that is what I wanted to mention. Anything that you guys want to ask before we switch to the next topic? I hope you have noted the reaction.
Sir, I didn't get what is syneresis fluid.
See, when you add FeCl3 solution into the slant, you will have a fluid accumulated, right, in the slant. After you add that, you wash the slant with it gently, there will be accumulation of that fluid in the slant, right? That's syneresis fluid.
Okay, sir.
Anything else that you guys would like to know before we move ahead? See, I always tell students, you know, that when it comes to biochemicals, probably I look at biochemicals more from the perspective of biochemistry, being teaching biochemistry for now 3 to 4 years. My perspective always sticks to the principal aspect, because ultimately protocols are something which are very standardized. You should know them, no doubt about it. You should know the precautions, you should know the steps, but it's very significant to know the principles, okay? Because that is what helps you realize that why am I doing this test and where should I apply this test, right? So please keep biochemistry principle also in mind when you are learning biochemicals, because that's very, very important. And it takes time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time to, you know, understand what is taking place exactly when I'm doing this particular test, right? So I hope everything is clear here. Can I get a response, please, so that I know we can move to the next topic?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. So let me just stop the recording and start new one because INDIC is a completely new test.